Men of Reddit, what's your creepy girl story? Story 1. I met a girl online. She seemed normal enough, so we ended up going out for a drink. I found out that night that she actually lived an hour away in a rural town, but whatever. Well, we went out, had a drink, then went to go play pool. We drove over in my vehicle, and when we got to the pool hall, she checked her phone and saw she had a text from her ex-BF. She proceeded to cry incessantly. I was trapped. I didn't know what to do, so I offered to take her back to her car. She said she wasn't sure if she could drive, and she asked if I would take her home. I declined, saying it wouldn't be a good idea because A. Her car was like a mile away. B. She lived an hour away. C. How in the hell did she plan to get to her car the next day? So she agrees for the night to end, all the while apologizing vigorously. The next day she texts me, apologizes, and offers to buy me lunch. She seemed alright when we were getting to know each other, and I was bored, so I figured what the hell and gave her another shot. She brought her kids to the lunch. When I saw them get out of the car, I texted her and said that it wasn't okay for me to meet them. She became irate and said her sitter canceled at the last minute. Even though the drive was an hour long from her house, she didn't find it important to ask if it would be weird for her kids to come. It was at that point that I stated I was no longer interested. Now for the creepy part. 2 days later she texted me, but I didn't respond. She kept at it and kept asking if I wanted to go out the next weekend. After multiple texts, I messaged her and said I wasn't interested and I had plans to take my friend out for her birthday. This resulted in even more irate messaging about how she wasn't comfortable with me going out with other girls, and so forth. This resulted in her getting blocked. Turns out she took a guess on where we would go, since there was only one nightclub in the town, and she showed up. I had to tell the birthday girl that I was leaving and to call me when she was ready to go. My night was ruined. Birthday girl got home okay, in case you're wondering. But wait, there's more. A couple of weeks after that, there was an ice storm and the power had gone out in the area. I ended up going over to a friend's house to hang out, since they had a generator. We were playing cards and enjoying ourselves. Suddenly I get a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Are you alright? I'm really worried," the message read. "I'm fine, who is this?" I replied. "It's Creepy Girl," she responded. I ignored it and put my phone down. The next message sent chills down my spine. "I'm really worried. I'm standing outside your house and all the lights are off. Are you sure you're okay?" She had never been to my house and I had never given her my last name. My final message before blocking her involved not contacting me or I'd call the police. It turns out she was a secretary or some shit for a police department, and she ran my tag to find out where I lived, drove over an hour to my house in the midst of an ice storm, then got a new number all so she could check up on me. Story 2. Once, an acquaintance added me on FB. When I clicked on her profile, it said she was in a relationship with someone. That someone was a fake account of me with my picture. Story 3. I was in New Orleans watching some street performers go crazy, and a mom came up behind me and fully grabbed both of my cheeks. I was 18 and standing next to both of my parents, and she said, "Hey, you remind me of my son," which is probably one of the weirdest things to say in that moment. Story 4. Girl in my dorm. She had a crush on my roommate. My roommate clearly didn't like and told her several times. Things got out of hand, and there were times where my roommate would come running back to the room yelling, "Lock the door, lock the door!" And moments later the girl and her friend would try to come barge in without permission. What's creepy is this next part. Apparently one night we accidentally left our room unlocked, and she decided to sneak in and play/rub our heads. We didn't wake up, but her roommate told us what she did a couple days later. I haven't seen her in about a year and I'm quite glad. Story 5. This younger girl who I never even spoke to once in high school had a crush on me. I got a note from her in my locker asking if I wanted to go out with her. I had no idea of how to get it back to her, so I just wrote, "No," and taped it to my locker. Then she started following me everywhere. I would try to talk to her, but she would just keep walking away, pretending I wasn't talking to her. This goes on for like 2 years. Then I was hanging out by myself one day around the neighborhood, and she comes walking up with 3 guys who wanted to kick my ass for some dumb unrelated stuff. She somehow found out about it and brought them to me. After an embarrassing scene with me diffusing the situation with these angry gentlemen, they leave, and she finally sits down on the curb right next to me and starts flirting. All I could do was just stare at her enormous bangs with a WTF expression until she got embarrassed and left. Story 6. I was bored once at a small, local festival and didn't want to be there, so I just got a drink and started walking around aimlessly when I noticed a fire breather. The display was interesting and she was pretty hot. When she was on break, she went to get a drink, and we started talking. She seemed nice, we had a laugh, but her break was up and she resumed her display, so I left her to it and continued to wander around. 5 minutes later, security was called to her display. Turns out some crazy girl whom I had never met before was following me around the festival and assaulted the fire breather. She had claimed that me and Crazy, were together and fire breather was trying to break us up. Story 7. I've got 2. First one was when I was 15. I was walking past my school and about to cross the road when a trio of drunk women in their 40s or 50s started about how good I looked, pressing me in against the wall and surrounded me so that I couldn't get out and holding me back while they feels. Not a fun experience, especially when you can't even tell people about it or how creeped out it's left you, because as a guy you should somehow be proud when women 3 times your age are grabbing your through your trousers against your will. The other one was about 4 years ago. I was 22 and asked a girl I'd met out. She seemed nice at first. Met her in a little cafe while I was waiting to meet some friends, and we got talking about Pokemon and some other stuff for 20 or 30 minutes before adding each other on Facebook. Only weird thing was that in that time she told me she'd been by her ex. I thought maybe she was just being open about it as a way of dealing with the trauma, so I let it slide and messaged her a bit later to see if she'd be interested in a date. She told me that she already had a boyfriend but that she'd love to hang out as friends, which was fair enough, so I agreed to that, and we met up a few days later. She'd brought her boyfriend with her, which I expected. I got the sense he wasn't too comfortable with me, which I can understand, but what threw me was she also brought her ex. I can't 100% say it was the same ex she'd mentioned, but he really gave off that vibe with the way he talked and behaved around her. She kept on talking about babies and abortions obsessively as well. You couldn't change the subject at all. Creeped me the hell out, so I just sat there with a smile and acted civil, while internally going, "Please don't kill me," and I haven't spoken to her since. Story 8. Not a guy myself, but one I dated had a couple fun stories. One was a girl he got set up with by friends on a blind date. As they went out to dinner, they passed a jewelry store, and she insisted on going in so they could pick out rings for when they get engaged. He paid for dinner and noped right out. The second one went better until he took her back to her place, where she went to the kitchen, pulled a nice big, sharp chef's knife, and told him he was staying the night. He said, "I did what any red-blooded American male would do." Agreed, but said I needed to go to the bathroom, where I promptly crawled out the window and never saw her again. Story 9. I had a friend who went absolutely crazy after her boyfriend broke up with her. Cutting, trying to force him to get back together, getting him kicked out of the group to isolate him only for it to backfire and throw a fit, etc. And that was only freshman year. When he started dating another girl from our group's senior year, she pretended to be cool, only to lie to the girl and try and convince her to break up with him because he was, definitely, texting her last night. Oh, and also G told her he hated her, and that she was ugly, and that he actually loved her, crazy girl, and was only with the new girl to make her jealous. Many other things happened too.